story. We have some breaking news to talk about tonight. Incredibly, there has been some civil religious jobs all across the country. People are dying, and no one...
There are thousands of voices delivering the news today. But there once was a time, not long ago, when one voice mattered most.
Good evening from the CBS News Control Center in New York. This is Walter Cronkite reporting. Tonight you'll see...
There is no way you can analyze it. You can't send it off to CSI and say, all right, look at the DNA of Walter Cronkite, and how do we replace that or replicate it?
If I knew the answer to what made Walter Cronkite, I'd be running all 3 networks and every cable channel too.
I think all you could do is say to them there was a time when one person could say, that's the way it is.
And that's the way it is.
That's the way it is. And that's the way it is.
And we all trusted it was true.
And it gave such a global village feel to things. No one moved. America gathered. This was the gateway to the American evening.
The United States told the communists...
I'm the son of a newsman, and it's a huge part of my life. I grew up in a newsroom. I know Walter very well. It's fun to be around somebody who's actually been part of real historical events.
Looks like a good flight. Oh, go, baby.
The witness to that Hilton violence said it seemed to be unprovoked on the part of the demonstrators.
You know, the guy who held our hands through some of the biggest changes in our country's history.
In Dallas, Texas...
We didn't know whether John F. Kennedy had died. Walter was the one who told us.
President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, some 38 minutes ago.
I think he is the most wonderful combination of a certain steel of integrity, but absolute humanity.
To me, represents the best of the First Amendment, the best of the freedom of the press.
At first, it was called the Watergate Caper.
He understood how to translate things to the television medium.
To ensure man's survival in the hostile environment of outer space.
Because Walter Cronkite didn't just play a reporter on TV. He was a reporter.
Ted Baxter, Walter Cronkite.
It's an honor to meet you, Mr. Cronkite.
Call me Walter.
It's amazing to, see the man. For me, he's such an icon.
Wait a minute, you're Walter Cronkite, and that's the way it is. Hold on, Walter, can you just a moment?
Meeting him was the best thing.
How you doing? Name's Robin.
Robin, what's your favorite Disney film?
He almost feels like an uncle to me. Over the years, I've gotten to know him. The guy I know is just funky, funny, kind, mischievous.
Otherwise, I feel all right.
I'm not suggesting for a moment that he's a saint. I'm certainly not a saint. Saints are the most boring people in the world, and Cronkite certainly was not that. He loved to have fun.
I invited him to a Grateful Dead show, and he said, I love your music. He saw what was going on. People were moving in and out of altered states of consciousness, as shall we say. I said, well, what do you think about all this, Walter? He says, relax, Mickey. It's the 90s.
That's the way it is. Celebrating Cronkite at 90.
Please welcome the most trusted man in America, Walter Cronkite. Walter.
Walter was, from the time I can remember, considered the most trusted man in America.
He's not the person in America I trust the most, I'll tell you, but I like him the most.
The most trusted man in America. How does a guy get to be that?
I think I was a workaholic from the very beginning. It just seems to me I always had 2 or 3 jobs going at the same time, but it was the newspaper work for me. I just fell in love with the darn business. I went off to war shortly after Pearl Harbor. I was 25 at the time.
I don't know of another reporter
who has a better record of covering combat than Walter did in World War II. He got where the work was. He got where the fighting was.
He was in London as a journalist, and then he started flying bombing missions. It's a tough gig, you know, given the fact that, you know, they're not going to discern, going, oh, look, it's a journalist, we cannot shoot at that plane. You know, and he would come back and give these reports about, you know, on the mission.
I'm just back from the biggest assignment that any American reporter could have so far in this war, covering the occupation of North Africa by American troops.
It was my first time on camera. I never took any elocution lessons, no diction lessons. I might have been a pretty decent broadcaster if I had. But what you see, I'm afraid, is what you get. In 1950, I got a call from Ed Murrow, who wanted me to come to work at CBS. But now that I had a family and a mortgage, I thought, well, why not?
Hello, everyone. Here we are again in Studio A, our CBS television control point for the Westinghouse coverage, this time of the Democratic National Convention.
I lived in Chicago in 1952. I watched Walter cover the Democratic and Republican conventions in that year, and I was riveted.
First session could contain some interesting developments, perhaps even a little fireworks.
Don't get panicky. Don't get panicky. It's only a newspaper.
The governor of South Carolina had been speaking. When he came back, he said, I want to assure this convention
that I did not set the place on fire.
This is Walter Cronkite on the Greenland ice cap.
Beyond the horizon lies the North Pole. Nice to meet you. I hope we'll have a good day. Would you like a piece of fish? I didn't watch much television at all, but something I did watch was a 20th Century with Walter Cronkite.
This is our story as the Prudential Insurance Company of America presents the 20th Century.
It's a great voice. Coming from a great man, that's a great thing.
We have just had, I've been advised, some film in from the Defense Department, the first official
We were
film.
making it up as we went along.
Here it is. This is the Explorer as it is being moved to the gantry. Unfortunately, however, the film seems to be upside down.
And out of it came today's television.
Flip polarity. Flip polarity. Flip polarity. Flip your polarity.
Fortunately, the Explorer went up right side up, and we're going to see it that way.
Clear that shot. Get him out. Get him out. Get him out.
I was assigned to take over the CBS Evening News in the spring of 1962.
Good evening from the CBS News Control Center in New York. This is Walter Cronkite reporting.
You walk into that studio.
How's it going? What's up?
You were walking into his office, and he was the managing editor. And he was the managing editor.
I think it's too far down for that, Don. All right. You know what I mean?
When Walter came to the evening news chair, he had a lot of pressure on him.
Good night, Jet.
Good night, David, and good night for NBC News.
Huntley Brinkley had already established themselves at NBC as the premier nightly news broadcast. They were well entrenched.
We're here in our not very commodious but most comfortable glassed-in booth.
Walter didn't like that at all because this man is a fierce competitor.
Call me Tuesday when you get back. Call me.
Walter did more than just sit at a desk and read copy off a teleprompter.
Hello?
Yeah. Walter Cronkite could pick up the phone and get Dwight Eisenhower, Ronald Reagan, Jack Kennedy on the phone.
And I remember the first time CBS had a half-hour broadcast was in 1963. And it was Walter Cronkite, to commemorate that broadcast, interviewing the president, Jack Kennedy.
Mr. President, the only hot war we've got running at the moment is, of course, the one in Vietnam.
I don't think that unless a greater effort is made by the government to win popular support, that the war can be won out there. In the final analysis, it's their war. They're the ones who have to win it or lose it.
A couple of months later, when Kennedy was assassinated, I remember thinking, isn't that ironic? Just a couple of months ago, he was interviewing the president, and now he's reporting on his death.
I was standing actually at the United Press machine At the moment that the bulletin came, that shots rang out while the president's motorcade drove through the streets of Dallas.
This is Walter Cronkite in our news.
I said, let's get on the air, let's get on the air.
There has been an attempt, as perhaps you know now, on the life of President Kennedy. He was wounded in an automobile driving from Dallas Airport into downtown Dallas.
I was suffering the same thing that people were. This can't happen, my God.
Their condition is as yet unknown.
And when you finally had to say it's official, the president is dead, pretty tough words in a situation like that. They were hard to come by.
From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, some 38 minutes ago. Vice President Lyndon Johnson has left the hospital in Dallas, but we do not know to where he has proceeded. Presumably, he will be taking the oath of office shortly and become the 36th President of the United States.
He had to take a moment, take off his glasses. And when that happens, you realize a whole nation can't speak.
He suffered, and he pulled it right back. It was simultaneously, oh, heaven, what do we do now? And we'll go on.
President Kennedy at Dallas Airport this morning was cheerful and waving. It had been quite a triumphal tour of Texas over the last 48 hours.
He handled it as a human being first and an anchorman second. And I think in times like that, that's what you want.
Mrs. Kennedy was stunned, but not in a state of shock as yet.
Walter Cronkite was the person who connected us all on that day.
The police in Dallas, Texas are convinced they have the man. This is the man charged with the murder of President Kennedy.
Friday, the president was assassinated. Saturday, Sunday, when incredibly, the assassin was assassinated.
There is Lee Oswald. He's been shot. He's been shot. Lee Oswald has been shot.
It was a very frightened country. Walter became not only everybody's anchorman, he was everybody's minister, priest, and rabbi. He calmed America down.
And I think that the day President Kennedy died was the day that television news, as we now know it, was born for all intents and purposes. And Walter Cronkite was a very important part of making it so.
John Fitzgerald Kennedy's final journey. Mrs. Kennedy holding back her tears, as indeed she has publicly ever since the tragic events of Friday.
The finality of it overwhelmed me. Up to then, there was a nightmare quality as the developments piled one on the other. This said, it's all true. It had happened, it was over, it was done. We were about to bury it, bury something of our past along with that man. John, saluting. Tough day. Anchormen shouldn't cry. The Beatles were on American television for the first time, not, as history seems to have it recorded, on the Ed Sullivan Show, but on the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite. If there's some credit in history for that, I want it.
November 22nd, 1963, the CBS Morning News aired a piece about the Beatles.
Yeah. Those are the Beatles, those are. And this is Beatleland, formerly known as Britain, where an epidemic called Beatlemania has seized the teenage population.
Because President Kennedy died, it never made air that night. Later in December, Walter decided to run the piece because he thought this was a time when Americans needed to be uplifted.
We just hope we are going to have quite a run.
And my gosh, we weren't off the air 1 minute that I had a phone call from Ed Sullivan, who I knew quite well. And Ed said, Walter, tell me about those kids. Tell me about those kids. What kids, Ed? You know, those kids you just had on the air. Those, what do you call them, the Buggles or the Beatles or something?
So, ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
Close your eyes and I'll kiss you. Tomorrow I'll miss you.
We were invited backstage for that first appearance, and they were to take my 2 teenage daughters.
The Beatles were everything. They were everything for girls my age at that time. And to be able to even just see them perform, much less meet them, was outrageous.
I don't think up to that time they really cared very much what their father did, but I suddenly was a hero in their eyes.
And I'll send all my loving to you. When I was 17, it was a very good year.
I went into Sinatra's office, and he said, what do you want? I said, I want to do a documentary on you. I'm going to ask you to sit in a seat opposite Walter Cronkite. That's the same seat Lyndon Johnson, Dwight Eisenhower, and Jack Kennedy sat in. If you don't think you're big enough to sit in that seat, I wouldn't do it if I were you. He looked at me and he said, I'm recording tomorrow night at United. You want to start then?
When I was 21.
Frank Sinatra became quite a close friend, despite an interview that he granted to me.
Scene 1.
In the middle of the interview, guy said, tell me, Frank, what about these allegations of mafia connections? Wham! He got up, a seat, stormed out, said, Hewitt, come with me.
He said, you know, I ought to kill you. And I said, you know, with anyone else, that's a figure of speech. With you, it's probably, you probably mean it. And he said, I mean it. And I said, well, if I have a choice, I'd rather you didn't. And I left. And Cronkite stayed and finished the interview.
What's the reaction of a mother of a highly popular entertainer when she reads these stories about your mobster associations, that sort of stuff in the papers?
Well, there is no degree of truth to begin with, and we just can't continue to try to fight something that has no basis, because you just tire of it after a while.
And we got by with it that way to my satisfaction, and apparently to his, although he wasn't happy about it.
A man dies when he refuses to take a stand for that which is true. So we're going to stand up right here amid horses. We're going to stand up right here in Alabama amid the billy clubs. We're going to stand up right here in Alabama, letting the world know that we are determined to be free.
Television journalism, I think, changed everything. The civil rights movement was really one of the first examples of that. You could not sugarcoat what was going on when they were putting hoses on children and African Americans in the South. And you saw the brutality of the authorities against African Americans, and seeing is believing.
This evening we tell the story of America's biggest civil rights demonstration, how it began, how it went, what it accomplished.
Walter was one of the few people in power positions that got behind that and pushed the story. In Birmingham, Alabama, 1963, the 16th Street Baptist Church was blown up by Klan members. 4 little girls that were murdered. The fact that it was 4 little girls, the fact that it took place in a church on a Sunday, that really shook people up.
Earth to earth, ashes to ashes.
America needed to look deep into itself. And this is one of the pivotal moments. It took these 4 little girls, innocent girls, to be murdered to make the country wake up.
At that moment that that bomb went off, America understood the real nature of the hate that was preventing integration, particularly in the South, but also throughout America. This was the awakening.
1, 2, 3, 4, we dropped our bombs, and now a tremendous G-load as we pull out of the dive. Wow.
In the early stages of our involvement in Vietnam, basically, I felt that our course was right.
Well, Colonel, it's a great way to go to war.
My concern grew with the concern of the American people.
Hell no, we won't go!
And the American people were confused. They were confounded by what was going on, even as I was. So I thought, why not go out there and do a first-person story on what I found out, what I felt about that war.
If the communist intention was to take and seize the cities, they came closer here at Hue than anywhere else. And now, 3 weeks after the offensive began, the firing still goes on.
Walter was a product very much of World War II, and that war, you know, the last good war, as they call it.
Whatever price the communists paid for this offensive, the price to the Allied cause was high.
And for Walter to come round to a view that America was fighting a wrong war took a bit of real strong stuff.
We flew out of Hue in a helicopter loaded with body bags of dead Marines. And as I got back and heard the leadership say, we've got the Viet Cong on the run, 150, 200,000 more men, and we're really going to finish them off, I couldn't help but think, tell that to the Marines. Tell it to those guys in that chopper. When I came back, we did a documentary, but in the conclusion of that, I simply told people what I thought about the state of the war in Vietnam, and it was that we better get out of it.
We have been too often disappointed by the optimism of the American leaders, both in Vietnam and Washington, to have faith any longer in the silver linings they find in the darkest clouds.
And I think it pained him to have to say what he thought about Vietnam. But he also understood how isolating the White House can be and how people can get to the point where they don't hear discordant voices. And he thought he knew what the truth was, and he thought he had an obligation to tell it.
It is increasingly clear to this reporter that the only rational way out then will be to negotiate, not as victors, but as an honorable people who lived up to their pledge to defend democracy and did the best they could. This is Walter Cronkite. Good night.
He changed the history of the war overnight because it was, for that time period in general, a young person's protest. And it became everyone else's wrong war at that point.
Here was the most trusted man in America saying this war is not right.
And Lyndon Johnson was sitting at a television set that night and said, if I've lost Walter Cronkite, I've lost the American people.
It is remarkable that one anchorman, one reporter, one journalist, whatever, could really affect the political fate of the country. But they didn't call Walter the most trusted man in America for nothing.
Is this Walter Cronkite Station or David Brinkley? How you doing, Walter?
You know Secretary Laird, though.
I've met all of America's presidents since Herbert Hoover, and I've known some of them pretty well.
I just love being in his presence. He has a calming and elevating effect, I think, on everybody who's around him, because you get the feeling that here is a real human being who is deep and thoughtful and shooting you straight.
And that's the way it is. And that's the way it is.
And that's the way it is.
And that's the way it is.
We'll be right back.
Gear down from 4th to 3rd and on to 2nd. Then hard on the gas and back up to speed. Boy, that's living.
Hell no, we won't go!
of in those 20 years while he was on the air occurred probably some of the most, incredible things, I would have to say, in our lifetime.
Good evening. Dr. Martin Luther King, the apostle of nonviolence in the civil rights movement, has been shot to death in Memphis, Tennessee.
And, he was there and reporting it.
That building across the street, Molotov cocktails, fire bombs, sniper fire.
He kind of put things together, made sense of this crazy world around us.
America ate to Walter Cronkite. They sat on the couch to Walter Cronkite.
Good evening.
And Walter gave it to them in as comfortable a way as you could pass on some of that bad news that he was passing on.
My thanks to all of you, and now it's on to Chicago, and let's win there.
The end of a brilliant political and public career. At the age of 42, Robert Francis Kennedy was dead.
Well, all I want to do is to tell you what they're doing.
He learned long ago, I think, a very important lesson that some of us have yet to learn. That if you're going to work as hard as he did and shoulder the responsibility that he did, you've got to play in equal amounts.
And you knew he had a real life, and you knew he had that family, and you knew he had wonderful Betsy.
They deeply loved each other, and they went to bed every night holding hands, and they waltzed in the kitchen over breakfast.
The good, muscular newsman in him always had the ballast of family, too, and I think it was in there that we trusted him.
I don't think there was ever a more difficult parental period in our history as there was for us who had teenage children in the 1960s. I can tell you how out of touch I was. I was way out of touch. Our daughter called and said, some of us have been invited to go to a concert. Mother and I just jumped to a conclusion that this was something probably with the New York Philharmonic. Well, my gosh, the next thing we know, they're coming on television of this wild bunch in the muck and the mud up at Woodstock with the dope running rampant.
A rock music festival that drew hundreds of thousands of young people.
My father, of course, was reporting the Woodstock Festival and was just going, oh my God.
Woodstock, concert, could that be where Kathy is? So we got the first phone call from her. I'm all right, I'm all right.
Stand by, Walter. Okay, you're on.
Weather good, astronauts in good shape, tracking system.
I think that our conquest of space is one of the great stories of the 20th century.
I don't know any words for this except the trite ones. Tension is mounting here at Cape Canaveral. Lift off. Looks like a good flight. Oh, go, baby.
He was a space nut. He really believed in the program, knew all of the astronauts.
The door is terrific. The building's shaking. Look at that rocket go into the clouds at 3,000 feet.
He was the eyes that the country got to watch that through as well, because he was like a kid watching those. He couldn't believe it.
That's it. Apollo 11, the beginning of man's greatest adventure.
I think we forget that the space program was about phenomenal bravery in the face of complete unknown. We were looking at the possibility that they would head to the moon and not be able to come back. It was scary. And he so saw it as what mankind had to do that it really did help make us stronger.
11, 10, 9, ignition sequence start, 6.
Never has there been before, nor will there be, anything like this pioneering adventure.
What a moment. Man on the way to the moon.
The landing on the moon presented an interesting emotional challenge for me. I had just as much time to prepare for that landing as the space program did.
30 seconds.
I'd watched it from the beginning.
30 feet, 2.5 down. Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Oh, boy. And yet, when that vehicle landed on the moon, I was speechless.
Boy.
I really couldn't say a thing.
And when Walter rejoiced over a man landing on the moon, America rejoiced with him.
Neil Armstrong, 38-year-old American standing on the surface of the moon.
Here was something everyone could rally around. And I think Walter Cronkite's embrace of that program gave people American heroes at a time when they really needed them.
There are stories that probably do some good in pushing people in the right direction. Prime Minister Begin of Israel and President Sadat of Egypt have been bitter enemies, as all the Arab nations are with Israel. We got President Sadat on the television by satellite.
How have you been? How's your health?
And the first thing he always said to me when we talked was, well, hello, Walter, how's Barbara?
This was a time when we were competing. For me to be competing with Walter Cronkite, hey, you know, what bigger honor could I have?
And I didn't care how Barbara was, to tell you the truth, and we got over that right quickly. And then I asked him, I said, there's a talk about you're going to Jerusalem.
How soon are you prepared to go?
As I told you, as earlier as possible.
It was Walter who said to both Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin, why don't you get together in Jerusalem? And to everybody's amazement, Anwar Sadat said yes.
Are you serious about going to Israel?
For sure, Walter.
Mr. President, hold on just a half a second, will you, sir? Just a moment.
And we got him on the television, and I reported what Sadat had said. And Begin kind of looked back, and he said that? And I said, yes. He said, well, tell him he can come. Tell him he can come.
This is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite.
Good evening. Not since the founding of the modern state of Israel has a leader of Israel met with a leader of Egypt. It happened this way earlier today in CBS News interviews with the two leaders.
It's not that surprising that he would know heads of state or politicians, but rock musicians.
I want to tell you how it's gonna be.
Certainly Walter had no idea that he was going to fall in with the Grateful Dead. I invited him to a Grateful Dead show. There was Walter Cronkite at the soundboard in Madison Square Garden. And he came back halftime, and he said, I was thinking of 1,000 reasons to leave early. He said, I can't think of one now. He said, you guys really get to somebody. I love your music. And that's how it all began. I feel very fortunate to be his friend. Very fortunate. Our relationship is filled with historical references. I mean, because Walter is he's a living testament, and he's seen it all.
Good evening from Paris. Reporting from Moscow. From the Great Wall of China. Reporting from Madrid.
This is Walter Cronkite aboard the Papal aircraft.
From the very beginning, I had a sense in looking at that lens that I wasn't talking to a lot of people. I was only talking to one person.
He was on the air at the time Lyndon Johnson passed away. And Tom Johnson, who was Lyndon Johnson's press secretary at the time, called Cronkite while he was on the air. And he took the call during a commercial. But he didn't have all the facts by the time he was back on the air. And so when the camera came back up, he said, wait a minute, hold on, I'm learning something here. And stayed on the phone talking to Tom Johnson until he had the who, what, why, where, when, and then told the American public that Lyndon Johnson had passed away.
I'm talking to Tom Johnston, the press secretary for Lyndon Johnson, who has reported that the 36th President of the United States died this afternoon.
Now, in all this day, when it has to be perfect and it has to be right and you can't make a mistake on the air and all of that, Cronkite understood, hey, we're about learning stuff here. We're about finding out things. And so he just told the American public watching his broadcast that night to wait a minute while I find out what's going on, and then I'll tell you.
We take you now to Athens, outside the prison where Socrates is being held. All things are as they were then, except you are there.
Now listen, everybody, don't get nervous for heaven's sake. Try to do it just like we rehearsed.
Just can't see him with a button-down cardigan in the workshop building, decoys or something.
I couldn't shake the feeling when he retired that something more than one man was leaving the chair.
We're rolling. This is my last broadcast as the anchorman of the CBS Evening News. For me, it's a moment for which I long have planned, but which nevertheless comes with some sadness. For almost 2 decades, after all, we've been meeting like this in the evenings, and I'll miss that. Dan Rather will be sitting in here for the next few years. Good night.
Nobody replaces Walter Cronkite. I succeeded him, but I didn't replace him.
I had dinner with him that night, and he said, I think maybe I'm making a terrible mistake.
Regret? I stepped down with delight that I was now going to have some free time to be with family. I must say that it lasted only a short time, that I realized that I had left something behind that I was missing.
He certainly didn't wallow in regret in his post-evening news years. He was very, very active.
We seem to have an affinity for Wales, and they have an affinity for us.
And that is the bitter inheritance of South Africa's children. This skull, the Piltdown Man, held...
He's constantly on the move. He tours more than I do.
The young people I see entering the field of journalism today are no less intelligent or dedicated than in my generation.
He took the job seriously. He took the responsibility seriously. And it's hard to say that he didn't take himself seriously, but you never felt that he was taking himself all that seriously.
Good evening. Good God, what's this lead about? Oh, that's right.
The best time to be with Walter is when he was with Betsy, and one cocktail. That was the... because then they both get kind of wonderfully salty and kind of funny. And 2 Irishmen walk out of a bar. It could happen. And it's the idea of him telling a joke at all. It's like, what?
He comes to my house in Italy, spent a week there. We had a great time. And he does a hysterical routine. He'll kill me for telling you, and he does this sort of fake striptease number that is the funniest thing you've ever seen.
At the slightest provocation at a party, he would get up and do it.
Da-da-da-da, and he does a dance and does that.
He stripped down totally without taking a thing off.
To be in his presence is really a thrill, because he is larger than life.
Ta-da!
He's someone so many respect.
It's a little different than my day, but it's familiar.
I think that a lot of people wanted him to run for office, and he could have.
President Cronkite, I like the way that sounds. He was that popular, and he would have made a damn good president.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege and honor to welcome Walter Cronkite.
Who's the most interesting person you've ever met, and why?
Well, it's probably my wife.
When he lost in life, when we lost Betsy Cronkite, a lot of us worried that there would be a wobble in his trajectory.
My parents were married 65 years and were hardly ever out of each other's sight. I can't even imagine what it was like for him.
It's been 2.5 years, and I miss her every minute.
She was a great leveling presence in his life, but life went on, it turns out, for this man with so many lives.
to see him conducting the orchestra. A great thing to see. That another skill he had, I didn't know. You know, be all of a sudden he put on skates at that moment. I go, okay, a double axel? I think I can do it. It seems appropriate.
Welcome to the 2006 Walter Cronkite Faith and Freedom Award Gala.
He has been a huge part of our history, and I think all of us in here have some of the same feelings, which is we want to thank you. We really appreciate what you've done. You are exactly what we all wish we were. You're what I wish I was, except 90.
He's a truly, I think, wonderful man, an old-fashioned gentleman, but a ferocious citizen. He cares about things still.
There were others, and they were very good, but they were not Walter. No one has that voice today. No one has that power today, and maybe that's not the worst thing.
Every once in a while, you get someone who is the exact right person at the exact right moment. I think we were just very lucky that it happened to be him.
When I was hired by CBS to take this job, we had dinner. His advice was very simple: just do the news. I think what he meant is be pure in your mission. Really tell people what's going on.
We were proud to work with him, for him. We loved him.
You will never again have a day when one man or one woman says, all right, listen up, America, I'm going to tell you what happened. And then at the end, I'm going to say, and that's the way it was. And you're going to believe me.
Glorious.
He really wasn't much of a tennis player. I slummed with him. I played mixed doubles with him. He was the girl.
And then I came across him years later doing a striptease.
He's got great legs.
Take 3 of section 3, an alternate opening with 2 full paragraphs, eliminating something else and all that stuff there.
Great legs, but I tell you, I don't ever want to see him fully stripped like that. It's too much.
It's gonna get you for this.